Welcome to Barry's in the Interim podcast, where we explore the cutting edge of innovative clinical trial design for the pharmaceutical and medical industries, and so much more. Let's dive in.
All right, welcome everybody back to In the Interim. I'm your host, Scott Barry. And for those maybe new to In the Interim, we explore the world of clinical trial science, statistical science. We get in deep to that. Today's episode may seem a little bit different to that. We're going to look at a strange intersection of clinical trial science and show business. And we'll come back to what that intersection means for that. But I'm going to start by introducing today's guest with how I met today's guest. And I say met in quotes a little bit. I don't know if he's heard this story, but my son went off to college freshman year, my fourth son, Cooper, who has done one of these podcasts, and he's playing baseball at Pitzer College. And of course, we're very, very nervous. Our baby is headed off to college, and is he going to find friends and how this is going to work? So he meets somebody there. All we know his name is Caleb, and a very good friend. Cool guy. He's on the baseball team. And so we feel great about that Cooper's got friends with that. And he tells us about Caleb. He's from Southern California area. He's actually from Santa Barbara. We spend some time in Santa Barbara. And he says, interestingly, in hindsight, he says he plays the guitar. And Dad, he does really well with the girls, he tells me. And so we find out about this, and then he's home for Christmas, middle of freshman year, and we're playing a trivia game, which we the Barrys play a lot of board games, trivia games, a game called Mind the Gap of different eras. And a trivia question comes up, which is, what was the name of the 1977 Shaun Cassidy #1 hit that starts, I met her on a Monday and my heart stood still? And my wife, Tammy, jumps up and starts singing the song, completely dancing around. And Cooper looks at us and say, "Oh, that's my friend Caleb's dad." And we look at him like he's got 7 heads. What are you talking about? He's Shaun Cassidy's son? And we didn't believe him. We end up Googling this, and turns out Caleb is Shaun's son. And that is how I met Shaun. And now we are baseball dads going to the baseball game. And Shaun is wearing the Pomona Pitzer Sage Hens jersey there, sporting it. Wonderful. So we hang around at the baseball field doing what normal baseball dads do. So this might be the first time, Shaun, you've ever been introduced as Caleb's dad on a media thing.
I'm thrilled to be introduced as Caleb's dad. I'm thrilled to be here with you, Scott. Thank you for having me. I think my lifetime work in statistics certainly qualifies me to be here.
Yes. And we're going to get to this intersection, but I think it's appropriate a little bit. This intersection of show business and statistics. Your history in show business is just fascinating. So tell us a little bit about your family, your parents, the show business.
Sure. My father was Jack Cassidy. He was a Tony Award winner on Broadway, singer and actor, Emmy nominee for his work in television, famous for playing villains on shows like Columbo. My mother is Shirley Jones, Academy Award winner for a film called Elmer Gantry, star of 3 of the most famous movie musicals ever, Oklahoma, Carousel, and The Music Man. Starred in a television series called The Partridge Family with my half-brother David. David had a big pop star career as a young guy and as an actor. And, when I was 18, I signed a recording contract, and I ended up getting a television show called The Hardy Boys. And my first record went to #1, and the good news in my family is that was not unique. So I think one of the reasons I'm talking to you is because I was able to survive all that fairly, I don't want to say easily, but cleanly, and more importantly, I found my true calling while working on the Hardy Boys. I fell in love with the writer's room, and I fell in love with writing and storytelling, which is what we're here to talk about. And fortunately, I found out I could do it. So I ended up creating a television show called American Gothic. And on the heels of American Gothic, I created another show and another show and another show. And I've been a writer-producer consistently in TV till this day. I just spent 5 years writing and producing a medical show called New Amsterdam, talking to a lot of doctors and nurses who aren't necessarily the best communicators, getting back to the point of this podcast. But to your uber point about the intersection of statistics and show business, I actually believe that all businesses now have had to interweave with show business because so much of every business involves sales, involves presentation, involves communication skills. And when I say show business, that doesn't necessarily mean it's inauthentic. It doesn't have to be fraudulent. I just think that you need to be able to connect with your audience in an emotional way as well as an intellectual way. And where a lot of very smart people, and I'm including writers in this, often fall down, is they miss that point. They speak intellectually, they speak from their head, but I've learned, I'm on tour right now doing a show that involves music and storytelling, a lot of storytelling. And it's less about what you say, but how you say it. And people don't necessarily remember what you say, but they remember how you made them feel. And that applies to every business.
Yeah, so we'll get to that. So Tammy, Cooper, and I, we went to your show. You're now touring, and we went to the show, and it was surprisingly good, which is sort of a tagline of the show. And it's different than any other concert I've been to. It's as much about the history, storytelling, and I'll come back to this because you talk a lot about your family. You get quite personal in that, which I think adds to the story. It adds to the authenticity of it. But you also play songs you've written, songs I've never heard before, but that aspect of it. So it's as much a tale. You know, you took us on a story for that. You intermingled the Do Run Run and That's Rock and Roll and things that take us back a little bit. But even that part of it, very much, you're telling us a story. And so I go to this and I'm watching it and say, oh, Shaun's a storyteller. This is what he does. It's a communicator more so than somebody who's, as you say, wears satin pants and sings an old 70s song.
Well, thank you. That was my goal. And by the way, you know, my last concert was at the Amsterdam in 1980 for 55,000 people, and I didn't do another concert until 2020. I took 40 years off, and I was certain I would never do another concert because I didn't want to be that guy trying to replicate the success I had as a kid. And, you know, we've all seen those guys. Fortunately, I didn't have to do that. Again, I've had this great career as a storyteller. And when I finally realized, because I missed a connection with the audience, but I didn't know how to do it again until I realized that the storytelling was my passkey. And going out and telling stories feels incredibly authentic to the life I'm living now. I'm writing scripts still. That's still my main job, right? So to be able to go out and tell stories and weave the stories into songs that some people of a certain age may know, other people may not. And our audience is fairly wide in terms of the demographic. The bulk of the people were kids in the 70s and 80s who bought my records, but a lot of them bring their own kids now. Or the Hardy Boys has been on television like for the last 5 years on Peacock. So there's a lot of young people in their 20s who come looking for Joe Hardy. They see a guy who looks like his dad. That's fine. They seem to be okay with that. But the storytelling is everything. And to your point, the show has a narrative arc. It has a beginning, middle, and end. And it's not completely scripted. I mean, I go off, but I couldn't have done it any other way. So in a way, it is like nothing I've ever done. And it feels like a full circle, because I couldn't do this at the Amsterdam. They were screaming at me the whole time, and I could barely hear myself. Hardly say hello, you know. So this is a very different experience for me, and I think it's a very unexpected experience for the audience. And I suspect a lot of your audience probably have no idea who I am because I was gone so long, and that's fine. But, you know, if you go to any of my social media and they say, what do you do? It says writer. The rest of this stuff is just part of it, but I'm a writer.
So it's interesting. Your arc here is, you know, playing a music #1 hit song, being a teen idol, a heartthrob, whatever you want to describe that. Before that, interestingly, I think, and you tell me, you were a magician, and I think you told the story that you did a show for Jennifer Aniston's 4-year-old birthday party. But I imagine you're telling a story as a magician at the same time.
Well, that is my intro to doing this. I was a magician doing kids' birthday parties from like the age of 12 to 15. And, you know, I'd go to the Hollywood magic shop and buy these tricks. I was not a sleight of hand guy. I mean, I could do a little bit with a quarter, but those people were like real technicians and extraordinary magicians. I was basically buying tricks that I could read the directions on and then perform. But a big part of the directions was the patter. And they'd come with this sort of hackneyed patter, which always felt a little stiff, like also aimed probably at a much older person than I was at the time. So I'd end up writing my own patter, and I'd kind of read the room, and depending on the audience, if the audience is 4, that's a specific, you know, yeah. The audience is 12, different. Yeah. But that was my training ground to get up in front of people and actually talk to them and look for a reaction and then respond honestly in the moment, as opposed to, and we've all seen these people, the salesman that comes in with their memorized shtick, right? And this is how, again, often a lot of people who are really skilled in one area but fall down with their communication feel that's the way you communicate. It's basically bad acting. You've learned your lines and you're saying them in a vacuum without actually allowing the other person to react, reading their reaction, and responding honestly and accordingly. I've worked with a lot of young actors over the years, and having produced and written and directed a lot of television shows, I feel I'm fairly qualified to help them. What I often say is, yeah, memorize the lines, but don't ever get close to memorizing a line reading. Your reading shouldn't be a reading at all. It should be an actual response to what you're hearing, to what's going on in the moment. And that's what people need to get comfortable doing in any business. Communication. And I'll give you a great one that was a gift to me from a director when I was a young actor I was working on a Broadway show, and I was very nervous. And this woman who had been an actress, Geraldine Fitzgerald, had done Wuthering Heights with Bette Davis, and had been in old Warner Brothers movies, and she was now like 80 and a director, and she said, your problem is you're coming out here wanting something from the audience. You're not here to get something from them. You're here to give them something. You have a gift for them. And I said, well, what's the gift? You. I'm the gift? Yes. That's it. If you come in there trying to get something, their love, their applause, their attention, their praise, they're going to smell the cologne of desperation on you. And the cologne of desperation is something people who are bad communicators awkwardly often wear. Because they want something, and you have a beautiful skill set, right? You have a lifetime, you have 2 generations of studying your field. You have a gift, you're giving it right now on this podcast. It's not about what do I get out of this? It's what do I get to share from my experience, right? And that rule should apply to everyone in every field.
It's so true, and it's so interesting within our field, a very mathematical one. We write proofs, we create formulas, we're doing this, but it doesn't do any good if you can't explain to somebody why it matters. So we're communicating with FDA regulators, we're communicating with audiences, technical audience, less technical audience. We may be talking to a patient via clinical trial, what it means to them within that setting. And so communicating is so incredibly important. And it's interesting because a lot of what you're describing, I may go to a talk and somebody throws out everything they know on a topic. You know, it's a little bit like what I did on my summer vacation. It's a bunch of, facts and things, and there's no why should the audience care? What does it mean to them? And it's almost what you describe. What am I providing to them? And I think it's at the center of communication, and it's what we struggle with at times, because we can always rely on our formula, our math, our graph.
Well, that's probably how many of you succeeded in school, too. They weren't asking you to give me an emotional context to this mathematical problem. You were just asked to solve the problem, and I'm sure you did it brilliantly. But when you're talking to another human being, especially one who may not be schooled at all in your field, the bridge is some emotional connection. You talking to a client or a patient about why the statistics on this particular drug you're testing matter in terms of actually potentially saving their life, now they're in, right? That's an emotional reason to listen. The math is not going to do it.
So the emotional connection, this is a really, this is a hard thing for me, and it's to do it. You said something that, by the way, there's a really nice podcast that Shaun does with Keith Sarloos. It's called Chopping It Up. He talks a lot about his history, really great stories. But you said something on there. You said the more specific you are about your life, the more it lands on other people.
So true. And I learned it doing this show. Because when I first started, I was talking generally about my family. I was talking kind of generally about me, thinking wrongly that if I'm general, it'll land on people. Because if I'm too specific, well, they brush their teeth with Colgate and I use Pepsodent. So how could they relate? No, they want to hear that you brush your teeth with Pepsodent. It actually is the passkey. The more specific you are, the more it lands on them. And it feels counterintuitive somehow, but it just is that way. So I started getting way more personal with my storytelling, very honest, open about everything. And man, people are laughing and crying and leaving the theater going, he's talking about me. He's talking about my life. That's my father he's talking about. That's, even if the circumstances are wildly different, even if I come from a family that's been in the public eye, irrelevant. We're all not that unique. And that was a big discovery for me.
Yeah, so it's such an ironic thing that I'm trying to plan out this podcast and how this sort of relates to people and how to go. Is I went with the story of my family and Cooper and the interactions of my wife doing this, and I try to do this on this podcast in a way to try to make it relatable in a way. And when I was teaching, I would do the same things. And you said, people won't necessarily remember what you said, but how it made them feel. When I was teaching and I told stories about my father winning my allowance in bets and how it taught me lessons about statistics, I would see them years later and they would remember that story and the positive thing. They didn't remember the statistical idea I was trying to get across to them, but they remembered those parts. And so it's something I try to do. It's hard. It's really hard for us, especially in a scientific setting, to do that in a 20-minute talk and all of that. But it was so interesting when you provided that aspect to you.
Well, it's a class that someone should be teaching at all of the colleges where math or statistics or science or anything that is on the surface purely intellectual. It's a bridge. It's such an important bridge. I occasionally guest lecture at USC and Chapman Universities in Southern California, and I speak with aspiring actors, writers, directors, and the first thing I say to them is, what do you want to be, or what do you think you are? And they'll, I'm a director, I'm an actor, I'm a thing. I said, well, let me give you my first gift of the day. Stop saying that about yourself. Say you're a creative, because you don't know what lane you're going to land in. And I'm here to tell you from my own experience, I've been in a lot of lanes. And if I decided that I was going to buy into you're a teen idol, which is what they called me 5 minutes into my career, the lifespan of a teen idol is about 8 seconds. And if I'm a teen idol and I'm no longer a teenager and neither is my audience, I'm done. So fortunately, I didn't buy that. But I'm saying this to you because the the most important part of when I'm talking to those young people is not only not branding themselves as a this, which mathematicians and scientists are very good at doing. They're very proud of their doctor degree, and I understand that, and rightfully so. But I'll give you another example. I do a class at USC. Musicians, often composers for television, often do not know how to communicate with the creators of the show. And the writers are about doing it too. They're not musicians. Musicians speak in a very different language. And the place you can meet in the middle with a musician and a screenwriter talking together is, how is the scene supposed to make you feel? Don't get into how many bars of what instrument are going to be underscoring that moment. That will confuse the writer. Don't let the writer talk about what the scene is about intellectually or what the lines are. What do you want the scene to feel like? That's where you can meet in the middle. So how do you reach your audience? You have to connect with them emotionally. It's the only way. Then they'll remember the statistics you offer them, because you set them in a context where they're not going to be bored. And even people, this is your business, not mine, but I would imagine statisticians get bored talking to other statisticians unless they're engaging storytellers.
Yes, for sure. It's a huge part of that. You describe this. The writers, some of them are quite introverted, and it's interesting, that aspect. I mean, we can discuss what's an introvert, what's an extrovert. I think you're a card-carrying introvert.
I actually am. I pretend to be an extrovert. I've learned how to do it. I do a very good extrovert impersonation. But I need to, when I've been out doing this in any form, I'm talking about at a cocktail party or on the stage or anywhere, I need to go back to my office and take a deep breath and be by myself. That's how I recharge. My wife is the opposite. She charges from the party. She loves the connection to the people outward. I'm the opposite. And most writers are that way. And as a result, most writers are not good verbal communicators. They're not good salespeople. And one of the parts of, a very important part of selling a television show, you got to go out there and P.T. Barnum your work. So they pay you to go and sit in a room quietly for a month and write that script. And that hurdle is sometimes insurmountable for a lot of very good writers. They just, they spent their high school years not going to the football games and dating the prettiest girls. They were in the corner watching and observing and thinking and maybe writing stuff down.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and it seems almost contradictory to people. So when I can create a talk, I can go talk in front of 500 people, and I can present something, and I have no anxiety about that. I don't know if it's that I control it or that. But then if I sit down for dinner with two people afterwards for an hour, that's stressful for me. I'm anxious about that. That's hard for me. And it's a different sort of skill set, where my wife is the same as your wife. She loves that kind of thing. She loves that part of it. Where
do you think that anxiety comes from in you?
Maybe a little bit of insecurity, that when I'm having a discussion with somebody, that I'm not interesting in part of that I don't know how to have the right conversation. So actually, my crutch in this, I have 3 brothers, and one of them is quite extroverted and is really good in that situation. He's funny, tells good stories. He's the life of the party. I'm never the life of the party. But I try to play him. I try to beat him, sort of thing. Now I don't want to jump the shark, or I don't want to be a jerk in that. I want to be authentic to who I am, but I try to do that, and it's a little bit. It's interesting. Statisticians can sit and be silent, and nobody's uncomfortable in that. At dinner, that's an uncomfortable thing. Silence.
It's funny that you use the word authentic, and that's where I have the problem too, because I often feel If I'm at a cocktail party and people are doing the small talk, I feel inauthentic doing it. I feel like I'm acting. And my wife gets on me when I don't do it because she says, you're being rude. Why am I being rude? Because I'm being quiet? Yes, because you're being quiet. It makes people uncomfortable. Okay, so I have to go and role play. And I can do it. I have been an actor. I can do it. But it feels like, what am I taking away? So when I meet someone like you, and I was that guy next to you at a dinner when we first met, I was fascinated by what you do. I don't meet a lot of statisticians. I don't want to hear about your next pilot. I can meet 100 other guys who can tell me that story. Yeah. I was fascinated. Interesting world, a world I'm not a part of. But I'm also interested, how does it affect my world? I mean, there are statisticians who judge whether a television show might be successful or not. I know it goes through that process. And what is the profit potential of this television show and how much money? I'm in a business to make money. So it's not why I do it, but it's why the people who buy my scripts do it.
Yeah, on the Chopping It Up podcast, you talked about where they present the show to 10 people and they say what they think, and your views on that were not necessarily positive. That's not what we do as statisticians, but yes, I'm sure statisticians do that.
Understood, and wasn't comparing the two. Those people are literally off the street, come have a free pizza, we're going to give you a dial, you watch the show, when you like something, you turn the dial up, when you don't like something, you turn the dial down. And FYI, Seinfeld was one of the lowest testing shows in history.
Wow.
And one of the biggest hits.
Yes. Okay, so now I spend a lot of time, and maybe that's partially why I'm comfortable getting in front of 500 people, is because I've spent a lot of time. I've thought of what's my story. And I love that you said, this is not, I'm not bullshitting people. That's not what I mean by story, but why should you care in the audience about what I'm going to present? And if I can set that up, first of all, if I can make myself authentic, talking about my family, I think that's sort of a huge part of it. And as somebody once told me, they said, remember, everybody in the audience wants you to succeed. They're spending their time on this. They want you to succeed. So they'll give you sort of leave. So I'm creating this story. So tell me about this creative process where you've got a new idea for a show. And I know you ask lots of people about things and you're looking for these stories and all of that. But then how do you create the tale you're going to tell? And how much do you mix in setting it up? How do you create your story?
You have to bring your audience in. If that audience is one or that audience is 1,000 people, it doesn't matter. It's, why does this story matter to you, person I'm talking to? My show, by example, is called The Road to Us. It's not called The Road to Me, because I want the show to resonate with the audiences and be about them as much as it is about me and my family. Our connection, this connection. When I go in to sell a television show now, it's again, what I learned as an actor and what I learned auditioning. Young actors often go in and they're desperate and they're hungry and they need the job. And everybody in the room, these producers, who are often way less comfortable than the actor because they didn't become actors. They're, people who sit behind a desk and often can't communicate all that well, but they're in there judging the actor. And if they smell the cologne of desperation on the actor, they don't want that person around. But if you go into that room not wanting anything but a pleasurable experience in the room right now, not trying to get the job, just have a great half an hour or 20 minutes with the person, and you're interested in them, how was your day? And that's a superficial question, but what do we have in common? What's our commonality? And I say this to my audience, in such a divided time where politics and religion and all kinds of stuff have divided us so dramatically in the country, I would argue that is 2% of 98% of what we have in common. And I say to the audience, I don't care about your politics. Whatever church you go to, great for you. And if you don't go, that's fine too. I care about the shared humanity. I cared about the shared experience of this evening. And I care about what we have in common, which is 98% of everything, I think. That is what's so important when you're addressing the audience. Here we are together. Here's an experience that I bet you've had, that I've had. Oh, you have a father too? Hey, me too. Hey, my mother did this, yours too. Wow, look at us. Now, they're not talking to someone talking at them. They're talking to a friend or even like a family member, right? And we're in this journey together. This is our story. And I have nothing to sell you. Best salesmen in the world come with nothing to sell you, and they end up selling you all kinds of things. And again, I don't think that's disingenuous. You know, I think when you own who you are, and you can say, look, I'm not good talking to people. I'm a statistician. That was not how I was trained. Own it. Vulnerability, self-deprecation, you win every time. I make jokes about myself all through my show. And people are rooting for you. They want you to succeed. Tell me something.
I was able to, at your show here that we went to in Austin, you did a meet, I don't want to call it a meet and greet, but you had a certain number of VIPs that came in. And so we were a part of that where you get asked questions and people are interested in, you know, the 1977 Shaun Cassidy, your family, all kinds of things. And I thought that was actually, and now I'm putting thoughts in about you, but I thought you loved that actually. It seemed like that was something because now you're getting feedback from people. But a lot of the same things you're saying, you were authentic in that, you responded to the questions, you had some humility to the responses, and for everybody that was in that, I'll bet they enjoyed the show afterwards even more. I did, because now I know things about you, and now all of a sudden this new song you've written, My First Crush, meant more to me from knowing a little bit of that. It made the story better. I enjoyed it better. And yeah, I'm ready to buy more things. I'm ready to buy wine from your My First Crush wine club.
Well, I'm glad. I love that part of the show, and it's not part of the show, but it's a warm-up for the show. And I was reluctant to do it. The traditional, by the way, this is all new since I was touring, because there's no such thing as a meet and greet in 1980. And when I first started going out again, I did these meet and greets where you meet people before the show, and it's like it's like a line to see Santa Claus, and they come up, you take a fast picture, shake their hand, next. And it felt, frankly, quite impersonal to me, and I didn't like the way it made me feel. People got their picture, so I suggested, why don't we do like the VIP meet and greet, but it's a Q&A, half an hour, 45 minutes before the show. And then we take little mini group pictures, so they get a picture, but more importantly, they actually get a real connection, which is what we're talking about here. They get to know me, I get to know them a little bit. I am now way warmed up for the show because I'm now half the audience, well, not half, but a quarter of the audience that I've already met, and they're there, and we're all in this together. So I think it's actually a win-win-win. And I'm also smart because I get asked things that I'm not necessarily asked, and the woman who sets up, gets them into their seats, she says, don't be shy. Ask him challenging questions. Don't ask him about his favorite color or his favorite food. And they do, and it's great. And it's a high wire because sometimes they get asked stuff that's wildly personal, and I don't shy away from it. I go, and they're grateful.
Is this tied to something else you said on the podcast I listened to, and I'm interested in how this is part of the communication. You said the shows you write are all about family. What does that mean?
Well, Norman Lear, who created All in the Family and many other hit shows, famously said every show is about family. Star Trek is about family. They may not be blood, but Kirk and Spock are brothers. And I didn't know it when I first started writing, but everything I've written has been about my family. It's about what I've learned in my family and how we interrelate and react to one another. And you change the names, you change the circumstances, but this communication thing, the model of it, for better or for worse, is born in our family around the kitchen table. And unfortunately, a lot of people come from a dysfunctional family, and that doesn't necessarily help them when they're out in the world. So, this is a very broad generalization, but I kind of feel we get two lives if we're lucky. We get the life we're born into, and we get the life we make. And the life we make is ultimately the really important one, because we're taking the good and the bad from our childhood and hopefully running with the good and putting the bad to bed. And then making choices that are our own, not necessarily dad insisted you be a statistician, so I am a statistician. Look, I know so many lawyers whose fathers were lawyers. They went to law school, they became lawyers. They hated being a lawyer, and now they're whatever. To a certain extent, that's true of me. I wasn't pushed into show business. My family, in fact, didn't want me. My parents didn't want me in show business. But it's all I knew. And, everybody's a plumber. You go into plumbing, and then you find out if you really like plumbing. And I went into plumbing, and I was a successful plumber, but I didn't love plumbing. So I found my path. There were no writers in my family. My father revered writers. His closest friends were writers. I mean, he really admired that, and obviously that went into me somewhere. Oh, writers are cool. They make up stuff, and they get paid to do it. Seems like a pretty good job.
You touched on a bit back the interaction with people and understanding the audience a little bit. Interestingly, somebody who does spend a bit of time with scientists teaching them communication is Alan Alda. And I
talked about him in a podcast I listened to of yours.
Yep. So he's written books about this and all this. He suggests that scientists do improv. And it's kind of an interesting thing. And I went to my company. So we have about 30 scientists here at Barry. And I said, for our annual retreat, we're going to do improv. And I almost had 30 people quit immediately.
I bet.
Yeah, sort of thing. So it's an interesting thing. And you almost sort of did that. And I think the notion of improv is understanding your audience and the interaction of that. And you're presenting something and thinking about that immediately as a way to improve communication. A good thing, bad thing?
I think it's an extraordinary thing. I think everyone should do it. I mean, what it does is it connects you with the inner child. That's what we did as kids. It's play, right? And someone in your field, I would imagine, one of the reasons I asked you, why do you feel uncomfortable in one-on-one at dinner? I would imagine so much of your professional life has been about getting it right, getting the right answer. Don't be wrong. Well, when you're in just sort of general communication with people, maybe you're going to look foolish. Maybe you're going to say the wrong thing. That's so counter to what you've been taught on the professional field, right? What I've learned, there's no wrong. When you get that, I'll go further than that. There's no failure. Here's the failure, not trying. Only failure. Going out there, I am perfectly capable now and comfortable even going out and making an ass of myself on the stage. Because if they're laughing at me because I fall down or I say something stupid, I'll laugh too. And not only that, they'll feel closer to me for the experience because, oh, I was just human. Guess what? I'm not this thing, this, Elvis entity. I'm a human being who can fall down and be stupid, and that's endearing. People like that. They root for you. So, the first thing I would say at a dinner party if I were you is say, look, I'm a statistician. I'm not the most comfortable in social situations, so please forgive me. Everybody at the table is going to want to talk to you all night.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to feel judged by you, even though you may be smarter than most of the people at the table.
It's interesting because I do have my wife that harasses me as well, that if I'm quiet, she gets on me for that, almost like I'm judging people or that kind of thing. And but it's hard. It's hard for me to sort of be vocal, to do that. It's something I work on. I continually work on.
Why do you think your brother's good at it? Because he's in the same field, right?
He's in the same field, and maybe you've touched on this a little bit of the sort of fear of being wrong kind of aspect of it. I do think there's a part of it of having a connection with a person. I really struggle when I get taken to a cocktail party with my wife and I know nobody and I will never see them again. That getting that connection with that person and asking them real questions. I try to do that of my kids. I try to do that. I try to ask them questions they've never been asked for, just partly, to get off script and to do that. It's hard to do that at a cocktail party. It's how's the weather? How are the Dodgers? Sort of thing. And it's superficial, that part of it.
I'm bad at it too, as I said, and I often deliberately don't do it. It's kind of a test though. Like if you're talking superficially and then you say, how did your father treat you when you were young or whenever? People either lean in because, wow, you just asked me something that really matters to me. And now, okay, you've passed the test. We actually can have a relationship now because I know I can talk to you about stuff that matters. And we don't need to keep doing this how's the weather business.
Yeah.
If they look at me like off foot, then I know, well, that relationship ain't going anywhere.
Yeah. It's interesting, the description of actors who are reading a script or memorizing a script. When I go to a talk and a statistician's presenting, a clinician's presenting, and they read the bullets on their slides and it's very rehearsed, it's rarely good. There are people that are uniquely can do that and they can accentuate the right parts and it's really good. But usually it's dry, it's boring. I can see the slide. It's that. It's being able to do it without that. And I've had to do that a couple times at public advisory committee meetings. I have 7 minutes. It's perfectly timed. They don't want me taking 8, and I've had to do it. I'm terrible at it. Because I feel like I'm doing a different skill set. I'm not actually thinking about what I'm saying. I'm not trying to provide context to the audience. I'm memorizing something.
Well, when I first put my show together and I said I want to do stories, I wrote all these stories down because, again, that's my job. I write every day. And then I started saying them out loud, and it sounded writerly. It didn't sound real. So I threw all that out, and I pulled up the tape recorder and just started talking, and that sounded conversational and real. And then I wrote it all down, and I memorized it. And I don't know how much of my show felt like it was memorized to you, but the goal is for all of it to feel like this is a story I'm going to tell, but I'm just telling it to you off the cuff from memory, not scripted. Even though much of the show is scripted, but I give myself the freedom to veer off and people say things at me and I'll run with that. But I'll get back to the point. The songs end up being kind of the intro and outro to the story. And often the story is setting up the song or the song is commenting on the story. But the real art, I guess, is memorizing everything and then forgetting what you've memorized and feeling the force. Trusting that you have enough information in there. That's how I pitch shows now. I'll write out my pitch. I write it down because these are the facts that are important. I want to get that out there. And I'll read it and listen to it, often record it because I remember things better orally than I do this way. And then I leave the script at home and I just go in and talk. And a lot of that stuff I wrote down is coming out, but it's coming out conversationally and it's coming out honestly in a reactive way. And maybe I don't get all the facts out that which seem so important to me in the room, but what is more important is that I'm doing this with the listener, as opposed to coming in and saying, this is my television show. It's about, people are already like, what am I doing for lunch? They're gone.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And this podcast has actually been just a completely different thing for me because every presentation I've ever given for 30 years, I have slides, I have a crutch, I have figures, I have graphs, I have formulas. And sometimes that takes over as, what am I supposed to say next? But on the podcast, I do the same thing. I have sort of an outline of all of this and then I try to forget it. and all that. It's almost like improv. This sort of feels like improv.
Well, it's conversation.
Yeah.
I'm saying something and you're responding as opposed to, oh, I have to do my note now.
Yeah.
You know, like,
And so I have another audience. In 1 week from today, I have to give a toast of my son at a wedding. He's getting married. And so now I'm a little bit nervous of this, and I don't want to have notes and I don't want to read them. But I need a script to follow, and I need to sort of play, what's my story? What's the point to this? So it's amazing how interaction with everybody in life seems to be this part of it. And part of being an introvert is I spend a huge amount of time thinking about it ahead of time. My extroverted wife just jumps in there and starts talking and knows it's going to end up in a good place, and she's comfortable with that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm in the middle. I do what you do. I do the research. I'm doing a speech at a wedding for my brother-in-law very soon. And the key word to get rid of is speech.
Yeah.
I'm not doing a speech. I'm just going to get up and talk about what he means to me and what his wife means. But I'll have thought a lot about it beforehand and written stuff down beforehand, and might even have cards in my pocket that I look at before I get up, and then seem like I'm just Mr. Conversation. I'm just making this up on the fly.
Now, when you do, I'm sort of curious this aspect, when you're doing New Amsterdam, and you've written a script, are the actors fully saying every word that's in the script, or is this guidelines and it's some ad lib during the course of it?
For the most part, I like the actors to adhere to the script, because I and the writing staff have spent many, many hours of our lives meticulously crafting these words and these moments. That said, if you have Robin Williams in your cast, or someone who's extraordinary at improv, you do both. You let them do it as scripted, and then you say, okay, you do one for you, and let's see what happens. And if they can beat the writing staff, great, we'll take it. But most actors aren't as good as Robin Williams at doing that. So, and also it affects the other actors. Then you're getting into improv in the scene, and the other actor has to be able to hit the ball back. And if you're giving them the wrong cue, they're going to be at sea. So following the script is important, and then veering from it, or like in rehearsal sometimes on the set, they'll come in with the scene that's written, and they'll say, hey, could I say this here instead, or can I invert this? And yeah, it sounds good. And again, I'm more oral. I hear scenes better than I read them. So having it play on its feet with good actors is really helpful for me.
And it sounds a little bit like where you went back and you talked about the songwriters. This is the mood I'm trying to get. This is the message. And if the actor knows that and it stays with that, presumably that's a positive thing. But they also have this skill set, I imagine, of a rehearsed line being presented in a way that doesn't feel rehearsed, that most of us as scientists don't.
The best actors don't memorize line readings. They just memorize the words.
Right.
So they can be in the moment, in the scene, and respond honestly. If they have memorized the lines with a line reading attached, it's going to feel totally absurd as a reaction to what's being given them. One of the other great things I learned just watching actors is that I can labor on a beautiful monologue for hours, write this perfectly written monologue, and the actor does it. But often they could just do a look, and they know what the scene's about with that look. That says everything that big monologue said in a much more eloquent way. Brevity is the soul of wit, right? Less words is always better. Aaron Sorkin, a great screenwriter. I think it applies to conversation too, by the way. And here I am going on and on. But Aaron Sorkin, tellingly, if you read an Aaron Sorkin script, he hardly ever has a character ask a question, because that's sort of cheap and it's easy. It's like, give me the information I need, so I'll feed you a question. How's the weather? Well, let me tell you about the weather. He writes in staccato, period-ending sentences almost all the time, and it's much sharper dialogue. Statement, 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 monologue, breath, statement's musical, right? And I'm musical, so dialogue matters to me. The rhythm of a line is as important as the content of the line. And again, it's going back full circle to what we're talking about. How you say something is almost as important as what you're saying, maybe more.
Yeah. And it comes back to this whole, how do they feel receiving what you just said?
How do they feel?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Fantastic. So thank you for joining us, scientists. It's incredibly valuable for us, and something we keep striving for here is to communicate the fabulous things we're doing here. For the audience out there, go to ShaunCassidy.com and see if you can catch one of the shows. I highly recommend it. Go to the podcast Chopping It Up and listen great stories about Shaun Cassidy in Walt Disney's office. You can hear that story, a great story. So Shaun, very much appreciate this. Really, really cool stuff.
Much appreciated. I'm thrilled you're doing this. I think it's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say hello to all of the doctors and statisticians out there.
Yeah.
Here, I'll give you one little parting shot. I went to see a new doctor recently, like just a general practitioner. And the first thing he said to me when I walked in the office after hello was, "Tell me your story." Not how do you feel, what's hurting you, tell me your story.
Wow.
It's like, dude, that's fantastic. And I said, I've never heard a doctor say that to me before. He said, well, we're learning. He said,
Wow.
Your story will inform your health in a big way. How can I treat you for your health if I don't know your story? Good one.
So the question is, how long did it take you to tell the Shaun Cassidy story?
Well, I told an abbreviated version, but but really what I said was, I'm thrilled you asked.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you tell me yours, I'll tell you mine.
Awesome. Awesome.
Thank
And yes, thank you for joining us here. And till everybody else, to the next time, we will be here in the interim.